Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. I have finished the decisive battle in the Valley of Gods, the system is activated. Chapter 21. In the Fishman Paradise, Aaron was sitting on his beach chair, basking in the sun, and then drank the wine in his hand happily. Sometimes these low-level humans are still very useful, at least the food and drink they have researched are much better than those in Fishman Island. Boom! Just when he put down the wine glass in his hand, there was a loud noise, and the wall on the right exploded, with masonry fragments flying everywhere. What's wrong? Is there an enemy? Shalba, go over and deal with it. Aaron raised his head and glanced over there casually, without even making a move to get up. Having been domineering in the East China Sea for so many years, it has become arrogant to a certain extent, and it has even forgotten that in the New World in the second half of the Grand Line, the Murlocs were just the darlings of slave traders. Brother Aaron. It's Jew. As soon as Shalba walked to the broken wall, his eyes widened and he looked at the unknown kissing fish man lying on the ground. He stretched out his hand to support it, but felt that its whole body was limp and it was completely gone. Breathe. Chirp. How could it be? Aaron jumped up from the beach chair and landed directly next to Shalba. He stretched out his hand and touched Jew's body. It seemed that the bones inside seemed to be broken into pieces. Who hurt my compatriots? Looking at Jew's body, Aaron's eyes turned red. Jew was in the Fishman Pirates with him, followed him for more than 10 years, and now he died in front of him. Brother Aaron, could it be? Ah! Suddenly, Shalba exclaimed, holding 6 hands in front of his chest at the same time, and his whole body was rushed to the edge of the pond by the huge force before he could stop. But at this time, the muscles on its 6 arms had begun to tremble non-stop, and it was completely unable to use any strength. The one who hit him was Kruby, who still had a surprised expression on his face, but his dilated pupils told the fishman that it was also dead. Who is it? Who is it? Aaron's eyes were bloodshot, and he rushed to the bedroom, picked up his shark-toothed sword, and rushed in the direction where Jew and Kruby flew. A lot of people could be seen in the distance. After hesitating for a few seconds, Aaron returned to his territory and waited for them quietly. Looking at the miserable situation of Jew and Kruby, it can also feel that the opponent is not bad at strength. There is a pond and sea here, which is its home field. I heard you yelling from far away. What's the rush? I'll send you down to see them right away. Alan hugged Nami's slender waist. Although the latter's face was red, seeing Alan kill 2 cadres of the Arlong pirates with only 2 fingers, a glimmer of hope arose in his heart. In the face of the permanent solution to Aaron's rule over Kokoja village, what would happen if he was hugged by Aaron? Aaron ignored Alan, but cast his fierce eyes at Nami, who was half leaning in his arms. Nami, he is the helper you found, right? Very good, I will tear him to pieces in front of you later, and then torture all the people in your Kokoja village to death to avenge my compatriots. Quote. Aaron's vicious image has been deeply ingrained in everyone's minds for a long time. So when it really showed its fierce power and released its murderous intent, everyone took a step back, except for Nami and Nami, who were hugged by Aaron around their slim waists. Nokigao was pulled by him. What are you afraid of? Listening to it talking nonsense there has made me anxious. I will take you to destroy the Fishman Island. Jinbei was killed by it for letting it talk nonsense there. Alan glanced at Aaron speechlessly. It had been a long time since anyone had said such cruel words in front of him, and he was a little uncomfortable. You know Brother Jinbei. Shichibukai Jinbei, this is Aaron's biggest support, otherwise with its strength, why would it be king in the East China Sea? Even if it can kill a warship, if the colonel appointed by the Marine headquarters in Rog Town comes in person, he can still easily destroy them. Even if you know Brother Jinbei, you can't make up for your mistake of killing my compatriots. As he said that, Aaron had already picked up the shark-toothed sword and slashed it from top to bottom. Without the slightest sound or ripple, the big knife was caught in Alan's hand, without even breaking the skin. It doesn't have the realm of a swordsman and can't even cut iron. How can it break through Alan's skin? Alan is not like Garp. A trip to the East China Sea can get Menka to chop an axe in the chest. You, let go. Aaron gritted his teeth and blushed. The ground beneath his feet was shattered by its force, but even with all its strength, it could not pull its weapon out of Aaron's hand. Come out. Alan ignored this guy at all, but turned his attention to Nami in his arms. What do you think we're going to do about this guy? I want to teach you a lesson. No, I want to kill it. Nami hesitated and didn't know what to say, but Nuo Chigao interrupted coldly from the side. Everyone present turned their attention to Nochigao. Even though Eren oppressed them in every possible way after ruling the sea area centered on Kokoja village, as ordinary people, it was still difficult for them to really say the words to kill him. At this time, Nuo Chigao's face was filled with anger. Belmir died under its gun. I will never forget the scene when Belmir fell that day. Mr. Allen, please, kill it. Allen's palms gently brushed Nuo Chigao's hair, and then he took her to the other side of his arms, and kicked Eren's chest with force. The latter flew straight out, smashed several stone pillars, and then collapsed on the ground, with traces of blood continuously overflowing from the corners of its mouth. It's quite difficult to master the power of stepping over ants without killing them, but fortunately, I can still accomplish it. Looking at Eren, who was coughing up blood and unable to get up not far away, Allen patted Nokigao's shoulder. If you want revenge, you can do it yourself. I guarantee it won't have the ability to fight back. Without the slightest hesitation, Nuo Chigao walked aside, picked up the flintlock gun scattered on the ground, and aimed it at Eren's head. Just when she was about to shoot, Allen kicked out a stone under his feet and hit Eren's head directly, shattering his skull. Only then did the bullet fired by Nokia pass through that location, shot into Eren's brain. A few drops of blood spattered out, and Nuo Chigao took a few steps back with a pale face, and was hugged into Allen's arms again. The two women looked at Eren's body, their bodies trembling uncontrollably, and they couldn't tell whether it was fear or inner excitement. It's okay, everything is over. Only a certain LSP whose predecessor was Haimi was gently comforting them. Jian just wanted to reach out and say something, but the doctor on the side grabbed his hand and covered his mouth. Others only saw Allen helping Nami and the others defeat Eren, but he noticed the indifference in Allen's eyes. That was a disregard for life. Different from Eren's wantonness, Allen really didn't take life seriously. Such a person is simply scarier than Eren. He really doesn't dare to let a Jian offend Eren. Don't worry, Eren is dead. I promise that no one will be able to bully you again. Allen hugged the soft and delicate bodies of the two women and softly made a promise. Thank you, Allen. Nami pursed her lips, and her voice was so low that Allen couldn't even hear it clearly. Nokigao glanced at Nami with envy, opened her mouth but didn't say anything, just leaned her head towards Allen's arms. Is this true? Eren was defeated like this? The villagers standing behind looked at each other, and they couldn't believe that Eren, who had oppressed them for 8 years, was killed so easily. We won, we won. Everyone fell into crazy joy, cheering constantly, and hugging each other with their neighbors, relatives and friends. Originally, this group of people wanted to come up and hug Allen, but seeing the state of him and Nami, they quickly retracted their hands and ran to the village on their own. This kind of good news must be told to your family as soon as possible. Let's go back too. Nami turned around and saw the villagers who had left. The blush on her face became even more beautiful. She took Nokigao's hand and left Allen's arms. Why? Nuochi was unprepared and was pulled directly out of Allen's arms by Nami. There was a trace of reluctance on her face, and then she immediately turned to look at Allen. Mr. Allen, please don't leave. I will go home and cook for you now. Jian, help me keep Mr. Allen. Zhang was stunned for a moment, and then he could only nodded with a wry smile. The two sisters felt that the young man in front of them was easy to talk to, but they felt chills standing on end just standing next to him. When they met before, Allen just asked for directions, and he didn't feel anything yet. But just now Allen had murderous intentions towards Eren. Even if it was only a slight impact, it was not something an ordinary person like him could bear. Okay, I know where Nuochigao's house is. You don't need to worry about me. I'll walk around and go there by myself. Eren has been dealt with. The two sisters must have too much to say and too many emotions to express. Eren will not disturb them at this time. After a while, their emotions have been vented, Nami has lost the motivation he has always had, and Nokigao is also confused. It will be the best time for him to gain the favor of the two girls. Even the relationship between a man and a woman is actually a mutual game. They just use various exchanges and actions to improve each other's goodwill to varying degrees. Marine number 00733, please ask the headquarters for instructions. At this time, in the Marine 16 branch, a lieutenant colonel under Colonel Mouse announced loudly to the phone bug in front of him. "Don't be so loud, just say it directly." The person on the other side of the phone was the department at the Marine headquarters responsible for reporting statistics and reviewing the issuance of wanted orders. Naturally, there was no need to give him a good attitude as a lieutenant colonel. A vicious pirate has appeared in the jurisdiction of the East China Sea Marine 16 branch. His name is Alan. Colonel Mouse has been killed by him. Please issue a wanted order from the headquarters and send a commander to deal with it. What about Alan? Send his photo over. I will confirm the truth as soon as possible and then get approval from my superiors. Okay, please hurry up, because we are not sure whether he will come to our 16th branch. Colonel Smoker in Rogtown has been notified for you, and he will go to provide support. The soldier of the headquarters who received Alan's photo first compared this face with the pirates who already had bounties on them to see if there was already a bounty amount. However, the result of the comparison made him stay in his original place, land. Report to sir, there is an emergency. The chief of the department in charge of the reward order is quite free on weekdays. As long as the people below investigate the situation clearly, he can send it to the leader for signature. This was the first time that one of his men showed such a panicked expression. It could even be said that he ran in with 2 pieces of paper in his hands. Why are you panicking? Is it possible that Roger has been resurrected? Are there any elites from our Marine headquarters anymore? Seeing his men in this state, he took a puff of cigarette speechlessly, then reached out and tapped his men to signal him to calm down first. The operator took a few deep breaths, and then placed a photo and a reward order on his commander's desk. Sir, this is a photo of a pirate who needs a bounty sent by the 16th branch of the East China Sea, but I found this person in the bounty already offered by the Marine headquarters, but... Just what? Since there is a reward, the amount of the reward can be adjusted according to the evil things he has done. Can't I just go and apply for approval? It's just that this person's reward is 5.5 billion. Plop. Before the words could even be finished, the officer, who was still crossing his legs, sat down on the ground. How much did you say? 55 billion. Without any time to hesitate, the officer almost snatched the reward order on the table into his hand. Subversary, Alan, why don't I remember that someone had such a high bounty? When was the bounty time? The operator suddenly realized that he was so frightened by Alan's reward amount that he forgot to check the reward time. 10 minutes later, he returned to the office in embarrassment. The reward time was 37 years ago. Seeing his embarrassed look, the officer in charge of formulating the reward order wanted to slap this guy out of the office. Look at this photo carefully. Is he 20 years old? Why are you yelling at me with a reward order from 37 years ago? That's nonsense. Go investigate this person and designate a reward according to regulations. Just order it. Yes. The operator awkwardly put away Alan's photo and reward order, quickly returned to his office, and began to use the phone bug to verify what happened in the East China Sea. An hour later, reward orders with Alan's photo were sent around the world, and the first reward amount reached 50 million Baileys. After all, for killing a Marine colonel, it's only natural that the bounty is higher than Luffy's. Nami, go to the door and see if Mr. Allen has come by. In the kitchen, Master Nuoki's work continued. He could only greet Nami and go to the door to wait for Alan to come. No, you've let me look at you many times now. With a smirk on her face, Nami suddenly tiptoed into the kitchen. At this time, Nokigao was preparing lunch seriously. She had made this orange omelette rice countless times, but this time she was extra serious and prepared every step carefully. Nuo Chigao, isn't it just an orange omelette with rice? Why don't you be so serious? Nokigao was startled by Nami, who suddenly raised her voice and shook her head helplessly, but the corners of her mouth also turned up a little. After Eren was killed, it was as if the dark clouds that had been shrouding the sky had dispersed. Everyone was in a great mood. Even on the hillside, they could hear the cheers in Kokoja village in the distance. This is for Mr. Allen, can you not be serious? While Nokigao was busy with what she was doing, she avoided Nami's hand around her waist with some discomfort. Hey, I just hugged you and you ran away. That Allen hugged you just now, I didn't see you running away. As the long-standing heartache was solved, Nami also returned to her original lively temperament, folding her hands in front of her chest pretending to be angry and pouting. Really, I remember there was a man who leaned in his arms from the moment we were on the road, and he didn't let go until the end. Come on, let's hurt each other. Nami was acting pretentious, and Nuo Chigao was not a vegetarian either. Both women were made red-faced by the other's remarks. Encountering such a scene, Nokigao could only tap Nami's forehead helplessly. Stop making trouble, the orange omelette rice will be ready soon. Go and greet Mr. Allen at the door. Nami couldn't help but be startled when she saw Nokigao wearing an apron and what she said. In her eyes, Nojiko and Belmir seemed to have merged into one. It really seemed like one. But now was not the time to say such words. Nami still smiled sweetly and stuck out her tongue towards Nokigao. Nuo Chigao, you look like a little daughter-in-law waiting for her husband to come home. Jondu said there will be a banquet soon, and you have to make orange omelette rice for them. Nuo Chigao's pretty face turned red and she rolled her eyes beautifully. Mr. Allen hasn't eaten since he got here. The banquet will be ready for a while, so it's good to eat something first. Seeing Nuo Chigao's daughter-in-law busy, Nami suddenly felt a little sour in her heart, but she still walked towards the slope with a smile. No one knows how good she is feeling now. After defeating the Aaron pirates, she feels as if all the shackles on her body have been released. Hey, Miss Nami, come outside to pick me up so early. Alan was familiar with him. Before Nami could say anything, he said hello to himself. Nami once again thought of Nokigao preparing lunch in the house. It felt a little weird, and she even felt like running away. The urge to leave, but clearly not appropriate. Nijigao is already preparing meals, let's go in quickly. In the room, Nokigao has already prepared 3 portions of orange omelette rice and put them on the table. This is a strange recipe in the pirate world. However, the Kingdom of Flowers where the Babao Navy is located seems to look like the Kingdom of Dragons in the previous life. I haven't visited it more than 30 years ago. Now that I have the opportunity, I must go there and see it. Maybe I can experience dragons again in this different world. Taste of country. The 3 of them sat around the table, and Nami excitedly talked about his experience at sea. Before Aaron was killed, these were all painful memories, but now that Aaron's problem has been solved, these are completely her personal adventures. By the way, Nami, I have something else to tell you. What's going on? Nami swallowed a big mouthful of rice happily, and then turned her beautiful eyes to Alan. When I left the Fishman Paradise just now, I found the place where they hid the treasure. Because the amount was too large, I didn't touch it. After the banquet, you can find some people in the village to move the money back. Alan took a quick glance and saw that Aaron and his gang did have a lot to hide. They must have at least 100 million to 200 million in savings, but it was completely unattractive to him. Ever since he went to sea more than 30 years ago, he has never taken things like Bailey seriously. Anyway, if he has no money, he can just find a pirate group to rob him. Those who can't beat him deserve to be robbed, and those who can't beat him can use the Xuanwu fruit's ability to jump into the sea and escape. But 1 year after he got the Xuanwu fruit, he never met an opponent he couldn't beat again. As the amount huge, little stars formed by Bailey appeared in Nami's eyes. Although Aaron is dead, her desire for wealth has penetrated into her daily habits. Now that she heard the news about the treasure, she naturally perked up immediately. About 100 to 200 million belly. Just put the money away and make your own decision on what to do with it. Seeing Alan who was not paying attention, Nami came over coyly. Alan, after all, you defeated Aaron. You should have the greatest control over its treasures. Otherwise, you should take some away first. Good guy, let him take part of the money on his own initiative. Is this something Nami can say? To be exaggerated, Alan, as Nami, may know her better than Nami herself. There are very few people who can let her take the initiative to let Bailey out. I rarely take money. If I have my share, I will give it all to you to help me arrange it. I believe you. He casually rubbed Nami's head, whose eyes had turned into stars. The latter nodded vigorously and ran out quickly. I've finished eating. Now I'm taking people to the Fishman Paradise. I can make everyone happy before the banquet. Nami left in a hurry, and Nokigao could only show a wry smile on his face. She has had such a frizzy temper since she was a child. Mr. Allen, please don't mind. It's okay, it's okay. It's so cute. You don't need to use honorifics, just call her Allen. Allen reached out and rubbed Nuo Chigao's head. The latter's body stiffened slightly, and with his red cheeks, he changed the position of his head so that Allen could rub it more smoothly. I don't know why, when facing Nami and Nokigao, Allen can't help but feel overflowing with fatherly love, and he wants to reach out and rub their heads at every turn. Nijigao, come on, let's have a banquet. The two talked for a while, and then some villagers came down the slope and asked them to go to the village. Free, the Fishman Paradise has been destroyed. We are free. Excited people were seen running around everywhere along the way. The original flag of the Dragon Pirates was also taken down and paraded around on their shoulders. Let's all have fun and dance. People from the surrounding villages came to Kokoja village, and everyone relaxed, drank wine, sang songs, and ate. I haven't been this happy for 8 whole years. Isn't it just for this moment to come after so many years of forbearance and suffering? Everyone was dancing to the music, and most of their obviously excited faces were stained with tears. They had been suppressed for too long. Although I have said it countless times, I still want to say thank you again. Thank you so much, Mr. Allen. Nokigao gently held Allen's hand, and the two walked slowly towards the banquet. Suddenly, she raised her head delicately, and added again with admiration in her eyes. Then let me say it again, who would have the heart to let beautiful girls like you and Nami suffer? Instead of thanking me, why not thank yourself? Allen's attitude has always been clear. There are too many people in this world who have suffered injustice. Although he sometimes draws his sword to help when he sees it, there is no end to the pirates. Therefore, only the people he cherishes will enjoy the treatment that allows him to take action, and there is no problem. Mr. Allen, are you here? The money in the Fishman Paradise has been moved to the village and will be distributed to everyone tomorrow. Do you really want me to be responsible? Nami, whose hard knot was untied, showed her cute side again in front of Allen. Yes, I can rest assured only if you are responsible. Remember to return all the hard-earned money to these villagers. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Nami's eyes filled with tears again, and she gently threw herself in front of Allen, sobbing softly. Allen's heart also felt a little distressed, and he suppressed those charms. I'm sorry, Allen, for making you all dirty. Please stay in Kokoja village today. You can take a bath and we will prepare some clothes for you. While Allen was coaxing her, Nami winked at Nokigao, who was still standing aside, and the latter instantly understood what she meant. Nami is right, Allen, please stay here for one night, and let us thank you properly. Nami and Nokigao each held one arm. This feeling was really like the fantasy of the previous life coming into reality. Moreover, wasn't this the purpose of coming to Kokoja village? Okay, I'll stay here for one more day. The faces of the two women showed a hint of excitement at the same time. The tacit understanding that is better than sisters is still there. As expected, Allen was arranged to stay in Nami's room that night. The fragrance of oranges with a hint of girlish fragrance was the best sleep aid. Nuo Chigao, I'm so tired, I can finally have a good rest. Nokigao looked at Nami lying on the other side of his bed and sighed sadly. Today's mood seems to be like a roller coaster. It goes up and down all of a sudden, which really consumes Nami's mind too much. Early the next morning, Nami felt a rare peace of mind and took a late nap. The two sisters lay on the bed and looked at each other speechlessly. The sun shone through the window onto the bed, making both girls feel more relaxed than ever before. Nami, now that Aaron's matter has been resolved and Kokoja village is no longer under your control, what are your plans next? Me, I'll just stay here with you and grow oranges and stuff like that. Why do you ask? Nami smiled awkwardly, and then gave Nuo Chigao a look that pretended to be relaxed. Nokigao stared straight at Nami and sighed secretly in his heart. The two grew up together, how could she not figure out what Nami was thinking? A few seconds passed, and Nami, who felt a little uncomfortable being looked at by Nokigao, twisted her body uncomfortably. Oh, Nochigao, why are you looking at me like that? Everything I said is true. Stop pretending, Nami, I don't know you yet. You want to continue going to sea, right? Nami's movements stagnated, her face looked a little ugly, and she seemed to be discouraged. She did have this idea, but she didn't know how to tell Nochigao yet, and she didn't expect that she would point it out directly. Nijigao, I want to continue going to sea. Nokigao's heart tightened. Although she had guessed it, she was still a little disappointed when Nami said it herself. But she also knows that Nami's dream since childhood is to draw a world map. As a relative, how can we be a stumbling block in her pursuit of her dreams? Well, I won't stop you from going to sea, but you are just an ordinary person. Even Aaron, a murloc with a bounty of tens of millions, is so strong. In the future, if you encounter bad guys with the same bounty or even stronger than him, what should I do? It's true that I don't want to stop Nami's dream, and it's even more true that I'm worried about her safety. Don't worry. How many times have I gone to sea? When did something go wrong? Nami's disapproval made Nokigao's eyes look more anxious. You were just doing some petty theft in the East China Sea before, but this time you want to conquer the whole world, and what you have to face is far beyond what the current pirates can compare to. Nami, I will really do it in the East China Sea. The family is on tenterhooks. Seeing that Nami's expression was a little disappointed, Nokigao quickly changed his tone. It's not that I won't let you go, it's just that you need a skilled and reliable companion. Saying that, Nokigao glanced gently at Nami's room. Nami was also stunned, thinking of the guy in the straw hat, the three-sword-style swordsman who was not very smart on his ship, and the long-nosed liar who had fought alongside them. But the next second, a figure immediately occupied most of her mind. It was Alan. If Alan appears again in the future, it may take more effort to occupy Nami's heart, but now he has taken the lead to deal with Aaron and cut off the softest spot in Nami's heart. It can be said that he overtook in a corner and came from behind. You mean, Alan, he can't do it. He likes you. How can he go to sea with me? Noticing the look in Nokigao's eyes, Nami was stunned for a moment, then shook her head. They were sisters who grew up together, and there was nothing to hide behind their words. Nokigao hesitated for a moment, but still shook his head. Nami, I feel that he may not like me. You see how angry he was yesterday after seeing Aaron playing tricks on you. I think there is a high probability that he will like you more. Even though he said this, Nuo Chigao still felt a little sour in his heart. But she also had to admit that Nami, who had fair skin and a better figure, did have a slightly better image than her. Nami was slightly cold when he heard this, and pointed at himself. Are you sure? Alan likes me. Of course. For some reason, Nuo Chigao felt a little lost, and her interest dropped. Nami did not notice her state, but silently recalled the way Alan held her in his arms to seek revenge on Aaron yesterday. The feeling of being held in his arms and cherished could only be found in Belmere when he was a child. You can feel it in your arms. She is already 18 years old, and has been wandering in the East China Sea for so long. Naturally, she understands that this feeling is completely different from Belmere's. It is a pure love between a man and a woman. Originally, this kind of relationship was just a luxury wish for Nami, but now that Aaron is dead, she is qualified to consider the issue of love. So, does Alan really like me? Is that love? Do I like him? Nuo Chi glanced sideways and saw Nami fell into silence. She didn't continue to say anything, but patted her shoulder. This is not a matter of urgency. Let's cooperate and let Alan stay for a few more days. The most important thing now is to go out and distribute Aaron's money to everyone. If Nami didn't have feelings for Alan, her reaction now would be to laugh and laugh instead of just falling into silence. It's obvious that she also has intentions for Alan. In this case, my sister, should also help her and let her find a good home. Oh, if you didn't tell me, I would have forgotten such an important thing. Nokigao, I will make arrangements now. With that said, Nami quickly put on her clothes and ran out in a hurry. Is this really that important? It's not clear whether Nami's heart was racing and she was in a panic mood. Oh, I slept so well this time. Alan stretched and walked out of Nami's bedroom. With his keen senses, even if he didn't mean to, he heard the conversation between the two women. It seems that what he did before was not in vain. His status in the hearts of the two women is still quite high. Alan, get up. I'll get you some water to wash your face. Seeing Alan coming out, a red cloud rose on Nuo Chigao's face, and he quickly grabbed the wash basin and rushed out of the door. After everyone ran outside, she breathed a sigh of relief. After discussing with Nami who she liked, I met the real owner directly, which was really embarrassing. After getting the water back, Nochigao brought out the breakfast prepared for Alan, and then crossed his legs from a distance and watched Alan wash his face and sit in front of the dining table to eat breakfast. With that dreamy look in her eyes and her serious look with her chin tilted, Alan could feel that this girl must have different feelings for him even though he was slow. A hero saving a beauty is always the easiest way to open a girl's heart. Coupled with the bonus of a handsome appearance, and a layer of buffs, the effect brought by it is not something that ordinary women can withstand. Nijigao, Nokigao, who was suddenly called out by Alan, was a little flustered, as embarrassed as if he had been caught stealing someone else's things. It's okay, I just like you very much, do you want to follow me? Alan didn't play hard to get. Since Nokigao had feelings for him, it was the easiest way to just hit the ball straight. One sentence directly made Nuochigao stunned on the spot, and he didn't react for a long time. Alan, I didn't hear something clearly about what you just said. Nuochigao swallowed her saliva and asked with a blush on her pretty face. She still couldn't believe her ears, fearing that she heard wrongly. I said, I like you very much. Do you want to be with me and stay with me? This. Nochigao's eyes were filled with joy at first, but soon conflicting emotions appeared. She had wanted to match Nami and Alan before, and she could see that Nami had that intention, but she didn't expect that Alan would confess to her first. This kind of thing is too bloody, what should Nami do? What's wrong? Don't you like me? Alan was a little embarrassed. Just now he thought he had pinched the handle in his hand, but the girl never responded. Could it be that he was also cursed by one of the 4 major illusions? No, I like you, it's just. What just? Alan appeared directly next to Nochigao, held her hand, and held her in his arms. It's not that much, but I know you like me, that's all. Let's be together. Then can you promise me something? Gently resting his head on Alan's shoulder, Nochigao did not resist his intimate movements, but whispered a request. The voice was so low that if Alan hadn't had excellent hearing, he wouldn't have been able to hear it. What's the matter? Tell me. I haven't encountered anything that I can't do in this sea. Alan moved his hands while giving Nokigao a guaranteed vote. The latter's face was already rosy and a little hot. This guy seemed quite serious before, why is he so dishonest right after he confessed his love? Nami's dream since childhood is to draw a sea map of the world. If she wants to go to sea, can you please take her with you? Protect her safety. This is my sister. Alan thought she was going to make some kind of request, but he didn't expect that it was for Nami. If nothing else, this request just hit his mind and coincided with him. He is not like those ruthless pirates who abandon their wives and children after going to sea. Even though he has made a name for himself in the new world, he does not come home to visit. He even does not know that his wife is no longer alive. Is it so hard to send a phone bug home? Nuochigao, don't worry, if she wants to go to sea, I will definitely be able to take her with her. Alan nodded towards Nokigao, and added in his heart, I will take you with me. Thank you very much. A smile appeared on Nokigao's face, which made Alan look a little crazy. At this time, she was no less charming than Nami. Why do we need so many polite words in our relationship? Bad guy. As he spoke, Alan exerted a little force on his fingertips, and Nokigao immediately rolled his eyes at him. She was originally quite cheerful and bold, but now she felt like a little bird clinging to someone while sitting on Alan's lap. Looking at Nuoki's bright eyes, Alan couldn't help but have an impulse, and slowly leaned over. Nuochigao's face turned red with embarrassment, and her heart beat rapidly and she closed her eyes. Nijigao, let me treat you to a piece of imported candy. Well, although Nokigao deliberately hid the relationship between the two, when Nami came back for dinner at noon, she still vaguely saw the clues. During the lunch break, Nokia secretly glanced at Alan more times than she could count, and her eyes were drawn. Look at the risotto in front of you, covered with a piece of cooked meat. Looking at the plate in front of Alan, the meat inside was carefully cut into small pieces and served with 2 colors of accessories and vegetables. This is no longer just differential treatment, it is simply treatment in heaven and on earth. Wow, Nuochigao, this food is really delicious. Whoever can marry you will be so lucky. While eating, Alan raised his eyebrows at Nuochi. The latter's face suddenly turned red, and he immediately responded with Alan's sweet smile. Okay, it's not as exaggerated as you said, it's just an ordinary barbecue. Nokiko spoke modestly, but in fact the corners of her mouth looked harder to suppress than Kizaru's 8-foot magatama. Okay, I've never had love, but that doesn't mean I'm blind. Nami took a vicious bite of the meat slices on his plate. The meat that he originally liked to eat didn't even taste good anymore. Dining with these two people is simply a non-stop fun. And for some reason, she felt a little unhappy. After taking a few bites of the food in front of her, she stood up. You guys eat, there are still some Baileys that haven't been distributed yet, I will continue to work. Nami walked out of the house quickly. She didn't know why, but she was in a panic. Isn't it just that the cooking is delicious? I'm still helping the villagers distribute belly. Why don't you praise me? Although Nami didn't say it out loud, Alan could easily capture the restless emotions in her heart with his knowledge. This is right. If Nami is indifferent to his and Nochigao's behavior, it can only prove that Nami has no feelings for him yet and needs to change her strategy. However, the most important thing now is not Nami, but the beauty who has just confirmed their relationship. Looking at Nokigao who was clearing away the dishes, Alan smiled evilly and waved to her. The latter's cheeks turned rosy instantly, but he still walked over obediently, and was hugged directly by Alan. At this time, Nokigao exuded an intoxicating and feminine aura, with a pretty nose, plump mouth, long eyelashes, and eyes with a hint of intoxication, which made Alan couldn't help but feel his index finger move. After an unknown amount of time, Nuochigao blushed and straightened out the clothes that had been left open by Alan's big hands, and then jumped out of his arms. You rest at home first, I'll go out and help Nami. As he said that, Nokigao ran out. She felt like she wouldn't be able to run if she didn't run. It's not that she is resisting anything, but that if it happens at this time, she is afraid that Nami will find out something. All right, she naively thought that she was hiding very well at noon. As everyone knows, Nami, who has been drifting at sea for 8 years, is best at observing other people's faces. Otherwise, how could she have deceived so many Baileys with her ordinary skills? Nuochigao, you should go back first, I have other things to do. In one afternoon, not only the villagers of Kokoja village, but also the villagers in the surrounding villages had distributed the belly that should be returned. Nami smiled, stretched, and then pushed Nokigao towards home. What's the matter? Do you need my help? No, it's not a big deal. Nokigao was a little curious and asked, but Nami smiled unnaturally and refused directly. After walking aimlessly for a while, Nami suddenly thought of something and ran wildly in another direction. An hour later, it was getting dark and stars appeared in the night sky. Nami stood in front of a tombstone panting. She, who was originally extremely timid, looked at the tombstone under the dim moonlight, but she didn't feel any fear, and her eyes were full of kindness. Belmir, Eren has been killed and Kokoja village is free. Will you be happy? Over the past few years, Nami thought she had become very strong, but sitting in front of Belmir's grave, big tears still flowed from the corners of her eyes. The man who killed Eren is called Alan, and he lives in our house now. And let me tell you, Nochigao likes him very much. I. After hesitating for a long time, Nami lowered his head and lowered his voice. I also like him very much, but I won't argue with Nuochigao. She and Alan laugh really happily together, so they will definitely be happy. After saying these words, Nami seemed to have been relieved of some pressure and felt much more relaxed. Hey, Belmir, now that Kokoja village is free, I'm going to pursue my dream. I will definitely succeed. Nami clenched her fists and showed a firm look on her face. This sentence was spoken not only to Belmir, but also to herself. So, we said before that you would ask Alan to accompany you to sea, are you not going to do it? As soon as Nami finished speaking, Nokigao walked out of the shadows behind her. Nami could easily see through the ambiguous relationship between her and Alan, so how could she not see that Nami was hiding something in her heart? Therefore, she waited for Nami in front of Belmir's grave early. The sudden appearance of Nokigao really startled Nami. She fell backwards and leaned against Belmir's tombstone. Why are you here? Didn't you go back to cook for Alan? There was a look of shame and anger on Nami's face. If Nokigao had been there, wouldn't everything she just said have been heard? My sister has something on her mind, how can I, the elder sister, not care about it? Nuochi smiled broadly and sat opposite Nami. The two of them sat on the ground, one on the left and the other on the right, separated by the tombstone, as if Belmir was still there when he was a child. I have nothing to worry about, so I don't need you to care. Nami felt warm in her heart, but she still retorted harshly. Are you really not worried? You are not jealous, are you, Nami? Nochigao, who had a gloating expression on his face, suddenly laughed. Why are you jealous? I'm not jealous. I can realize my dream by myself without anyone's help. Seeing Nami's arrogant expression, Nuochi sighed and put away her smile. I've already told Alan, and he promised to take you with him when he goes to sea, so that Belmir and I won't have to worry about you. I don't want it. I don't want him to leave with me and leave you alone in Kokoja village, absolutely not. Nami suddenly stood up, shouted a few words vigorously, turned around and ran down the mountain. Nuochi-gao was startled, then reached out and brushed off the dust falling on the tombstone. Nami's temper is still the same as when she was little. As an older sister, how can I compete with my younger sister for things? Are you right, Belmir? Her eyes were a little red, but she still put her mood away and walked outside. What's going on? Alan looked at the two sisters with some confusion as they walked into the room one after another, and the expressions on their faces were not very good. When Nami saw Alan, she calmed down the unhappiness on her face and forced a smile. Alan, I have just decided that I will go to sea in a few days to fulfill my dream. I know, Nuochi-gao told me that I will take you with me when the time comes. Need not. Nami also felt that his reaction might be a bit excessive, so he quickly softened his tone and added. It's fine that you and Nochigao are just in Kokoja village. There's no need to go out and wander with me. Nami, you. Nuochi-gao frowned and was about to say something, but Alan stretched out his hand to stop him. Nami, you may have some misunderstandings. Even if Nuochi and I are together, I will take her out to sea and will not leave her here. Only when you step into the real sea in the future will you understand the name Alan. What does it mean? Hearing Alan's words, Nami originally wanted to say something to refute him, but thinking that Aaron couldn't even block a finger in front of him, she knew in her heart that Alan was definitely not an ordinary person even on the sea. Roll. So, the question now is that I am going to take Nokigao to sea, do you want to come with us? Nokigao looked at Alan with some confusion, and then at Nami. How did this conversation turn into that she was going to take Nami out to sea? The sea outside is too dangerous, you take Nuochi-gao. You can rest assured about this. Nokigao will be extremely safe by my side. Of course, the same goes for you, Nami. No one will hurt you again. Alan's words were extremely confident. Considering the current situation on the sea, unless he risked his own life and ran to the Marine headquarters, it would be impossible to assemble the lineup that surrounded and killed him back then. I need to think about it. Nami, who originally wanted to come back for a showdown, was really moved by Alan's words. If she had a strong person like Alan by her side when she went to sea to draw the chart, she would really have no worries at all. Okay, think about it carefully. This matter must come to an end. Nami, you are not allowed to run away secretly. Nami nodded seriously, and as soon as he walked into the room, Nokigao added something behind him. I won't run. Nami turned her head and made a funny expression at Nokigao, and then quickly walked into the bedroom where they were resting. Seeing Nami walk into the room, Alan stretched out his hand towards Nokigao, who sat on his lap. Alan, Nami seems to have discovered our relationship. Nuochi-gao's face turned slightly red. He glanced at the bedroom that Nami had just entered, and lowered his voice. Just discover it if you find it. Isn't it better this way, lest you have to be sneaky? Alan picked her up directly and walked towards his bedroom. What are you doing? Nami has found out anyway, so wouldn't it be better if we just sleep together tonight? With Alan's knowledge, he naturally discovered that behind the door that Nami had just entered, a figure was leaning against the door and listening carefully to the sounds outside. It wasn't until Alan entered the bedroom and heard the sound of the door closing that she slid feebly along the door and sat on the ground. Then she reacted instantly, her pretty face flushed. Nami, what are you doing? Why are you eavesdropping on two people talking? Those are your sister and brother-in-law. Oh, why are you thinking so much? Do you want to go to sea with Alan? In another bedroom, Nuo Chigao gently closed the door tightly with trembling hands, then looked down at her toes, her face turned red and purple. Just come over after closing the door. Alan sat on the bed and waved to her gently, then watched her walk over slowly and awkwardly. Oops. Faced with this situation, Alan didn't have the patience to wait for her to move lightly. He directly stretched out his hand and pulled Nokigao to his side, and then gently pressed her hands, eyes in her lips. Eyes looking at each other tenderly. Nuo Chigao, is that okay? Although it sounds like he is asking for her opinion, now that the posture and state of the two of them have reached this point, is it really possible to say no? You like me. Alan did not answer, but used his passionate movements to tell her the answer in his heart. From then on, the world of pirates lost a girl and gained a young woman. It wasn't until the next morning that the sun shone into the windowsill and the two of them opened their eyes. Oops. Just when Nokigao wanted to sneak out of bed to prepare breakfast for Alan, she felt her legs weaken and sat back on the bed. You don't have to rush to cook. Take a good rest. I'll try to be more careful in the future. Holding Nokigao's waist from behind, Alan buried his face in her hair and took a deep breath. Nuo Chigao, who was held by him, had spring in her eyes, feeling the intimate contact of her lover behind her. Actually, it's not very tiring, as long as you are happy. This is also the responsibility of a wife to serve her husband. The originally outgoing and cheerful Nuo Chigao seemed to have matured overnight. Not only did the tone of her speech become much gentler, but even the content made Alan heartwarming. Nami, who was still in another room, slowly opened her eyes, and the dark circles on her face were still vaguely visible. Suddenly, she snorted angrily and glanced in the direction of the door. But she still got dressed as quickly as possible, sat in the hall, and waited for Nuo Chigao to come out soon. Sure enough, not long after, there was a click, and the door of the bedroom occupied by Alan opened gently, and Nokigao sneaked out. As soon as he raised his head, he saw a man with a meaningful smile on his face. Najigao, you. Seeing the tiptoeing look of Nuo Chigao, Nami became very angry. Now you know that you are careful not to let her find out. This is not what you did last night. Seeing that he was caught by Nami, Nokigao could only smile and scratch his head. But then she thought about it and felt something was wrong. She was Nami's sister and Alan's wife. This was nothing shameful. Why are you so arrogant? Thinking of this, she stood up generously, raised her head and looked directly into Nami's eyes. I have decided that Alan is my husband, so isn't it normal for us to live together? Nami didn't expect Nokigao to say it directly. Instead, she was stunned by what she said, and then she had a complicated expression and smiled awkwardly. I'm not used to the two of us being together. Are you a little uncomfortable with you suddenly becoming someone else's wife? Don't worry, I've become Alan's wife and also your sister. Is there anything wrong with it? Nuo Chigao's face was also a little blushing, but she started preparing breakfast for the two of them as usual. Alan walked out of the bedroom shirtless and greeted Nami equally generously. Originally he was dressed like this, so Nami didn't feel anything. But now that she saw his naked upper body and strong muscles, her mind unconsciously recalled the faint voice last night. What a sin. Nami really couldn't look directly at Alan now. She could only spit lightly, shook her head, forced herself not to think about the voice last night, and then moved her eyes away, trying not to look at Alan. Nami, a group of pirates came to the village, saying they are here to find you. The three of them had just finished eating when Aegean ran over from outside panting. Although the pirates who came did not look as vicious as Aaron, the word, pirate, was the nightmare of Kokoja village. If they hadn't called Nami by name, Aegean and the others would have easily had a stress reaction. Pirate, could it be? A figure wearing a straw hat appeared in Nami's mind. After Alan killed Aaron in the past few days, she relaxed and was busy giving out Baileys to the villagers, forgetting about the pirates. To the back of the head. Pirate, is there anything going on? Could it be that someone who was deceived by Nami before came to visit? There was a look of worry in Nokigao's eyes, and Alan immediately put his arm around her shoulders. There's no point worrying here, let's go take a look with Nami. A group of 3 people came to Kokoja village from the hillside. The group of pirates standing on the street turned out to be Straw Hat Luffy, Santo Ryu Zoro, Usopp, Sword God Sword Master, and those who had boarded the ship at Sea Barati Restaurant. Sanji. Hey, Nami, I'm here to pick you up. Luffy, who was still surrounded by the villagers, immediately brightened up when he saw Nami. He stretched out his arms to grab a branch on the side, and in the blink of an eye, he swung his whole body towards Nami. Suddenly, Luffy's face, which was still laughing in the air, froze. He had already seen the man appearing next to Nami. Kid, don't go to the lady so recklessly. Before Luffy could land, Oren's fingertips flicked, and a strong gust of wind pushed him back. He rolled several times on the ground and landed right at Zoro's feet. Is he? Zoro and Sanji's expressions changed at the same time. They all saw the battle between Allen and Hawkeye. Even Hawkeye, the world's greatest swordsman, couldn't get any favors from him. Luffy, although I also want Nami to come back, but, otherwise we forget it. Just get the Mary back. Usopp swallowed, not even bothering to wipe the sweat from his face, and quietly moved closer to Luffy. Before, he thought that Luffy and Zoro were the strongest men on the sea, but in the end, they gave him a solid lesson at Barati Restaurant on the sea, and also let him know how much he had been watching the sky from a well before. I don't want it. Luffy curled his lips, but no matter how crazy he was, he knew that the Oren in front of him was not something he could defeat now. Nami, aren't we partners? There was a trace of hesitation on Nami's face, and she also thought of her previous experiences with Luffy. But Allen was also very kind to her, defeated Eren, and liberated Kokoja village. Two little people appeared in her heart. A little Nami with devil horns shouted, Allen is already with Noki, do you want to watch them every day? Another little Nami with wings is also shouting, if you don't follow Nokigao, you won't know when you will see her again on the sea. She won't be waiting for you in one place. Demon Nami, I have an idea. You are not sisters anyway, so just take Ellen away. Angel Nami, you can't do this. That would make Noki go sad. If so, you might as well just follow Luffy. Demon Nami, if it doesn't work out, just follow Oren and the others. Oren also likes you a little, so let him choose. Angel Nami. Nami became a little confused as she thought about it. Originally she was considering whether to leave with Luffy, but now somehow, she was thinking about whether to compete with Nokio for Oren. Nami was still hesitating here, but Allen turned his attention to Zoro. From the moment they appeared just now, the system started giving crazy prompts. Road to the Strong Part 2. The Straw Hat Boy already has his own one-piece right hand, the three-sword swordsman Roronoa Zoro. Use your strength to teach them a lesson again. Mission details. Please use swordsmanship to defeat the three-sword swordsman Roronoa Zoro. Warm reminder. The main task cannot be refused. Please host complete the task seriously. There will be corresponding rewards for each completed task. Hey, that three-sword swordsman, how are your injuries? Zoro was stunned by Allen's question, and subconsciously touched the wound on his chest, feeling bursts of pain. There is no professional ship's doctor in the Barati Restaurant on the sea. They all treat it according to the normal bandaging after battle. Doctor, is the doctor here? The old village doctor wearing a black headband hurriedly squeezed out of the crowd. Brother Allen, what's wrong? Take care of this guy's injuries and try to make him move as much as possible. I'll have to spar with him later. He said he wanted to fight Zoro. Usopp and Sanji looked at each other face to face, feeling a little overwhelmed. Hey, what are you going to do to the swordsmen of our pirate group? Luffy reached out and pressed his straw hat. Although it was made of ordinary materials, it was Luffy's belief in going to sea. Allen didn't even look at him, he just looked at Zoro and raised the wooden sword in his hand. As a swordsman, do you want to refuse the challenge of the sword? How is that possible? Just wait a moment. Zoro gritted his teeth and smiled, forcing the doctor to remove the bandage on his chest. For a moment, the whole place was in an uproar. The knife mark on his chest that almost cut his entire body from top to bottom made everyone shudder and the hairs on their hair stood up. How did you survive this kind of injury? The old village doctor murmured as he looked at the injury on Zoro's chest, took out the powder from the medicine box he carried with him and sprinkled it on it. If you want to move freely, this wound must be stitched for you. Come on, just sew it here. Zoro's mouth twitched when he heard this, then he pulled out his Wado Ikimonji and bit it on the handle. The old village doctor wanted to persuade him, but seeing the firmness in Zoro's eyes, he sighed and returned to the clinic to prepare stitches for suturing. As the first needle passed through the flesh, Zoro's face instantly turned pale. Nokigao couldn't stand it anymore and hid directly in Alan's arms. She could shoot Eren to death, but this kind of suturing directly on the flesh was still a bit too exciting for her. Nami hesitated for a moment, then turned around to cooperate with Alan's arms and buried her face in his chest. Sanji, who was still standing next to Luffy, naturally saw this scene, with a flash of fire in his eyes, but thinking of Eren's fighting power, he still gave up his childish ideas. The sewing speed was not slow. After a few minutes, Zoro casually wiped away the remaining blood on his chest with gauze, then waved to the two sword masters, who knowingly threw their weapons to them. It's such an honor to have a man who can fight against that man take the initiative to challenge me. Eyes fixed on Alan, Zoro also had a look of excitement on his face. Don't get me wrong, your current level is not worthy of my efforts. I just want to give you some guidance for the sake of taking care of Nami. And the Straw Hat Boy over there, you can also come and listen. Can I listen too? Luffy walked over carelessly. Although he was clamoring to defeat Alan before, he was still pacing over as if he was familiar with it. On the vast sea, in the second half of the Grand Line, the strong men who stand at the top of the pirates will all have 3 colors of haki: knowledge color, armed color and conquerors. If you can get to that point in the future, you will naturally encounter them. What I'm talking about is the armed color. Alan didn't even look at Luffy, but stretched out his hand directly, and the armed color directly covered it, and the entire arm instantly turned black. This is armed color haki. It is a kind of haki that can improve one's own defense and attack power. Covering it on oneself can increase one's own defense and attack power. After practicing to a higher level, it can be covered on weapons. Eagle Eye the Black Sword is always trained with armed colors. As Alan spoke, his armed domineering energy slowly flowed onto the wooden sword, turning it black. You can attack me now. 3 swordsman style. Demon Slayer. Zoro didn't hesitate at all, and quickly made a crossed posture with the 2 swords in his hands. He swung the swords with both hands at the same time, attacking Alan from both sides, and slashed the word, Wado, in his mouth. Ding ding ding. The 2 broken swords fell to the ground. As Kuina's thoughts for Zoro, Alan still left him the word, Wado. Otherwise, without the protection of haki, it would be impossible for Alan to cut off the 21 sharp sword directly with 1 blow, but it would still be okay to leave some damage. This is armed haki. Even if I don't use much force, the damage caused by the wooden sword is unimaginable. Johnny and Joseph looked at their weapons that had been broken into 2 with wide eyes, and their lips were trembling slightly. But thinking of Alan's fighting power, there were still tears in his eyes, and they held each other's hands, trying not to make a sound. Is this the armed domination? Is it the standard equipment of all strong men? Zoro stared blankly at the 2 broken swords in his hands, not knowing what to say. He had just walked out of Shimotsuki village and wanted to challenge all the kendo masters in the world. At this moment, Alan completely extinguished him. The next second, Alan's wooden sword appeared in front of Zoro. Under the huge force, he could not bite Hidao Yiwen. The knife in his mouth was also knocked to the ground by Alan, and he spit out a mouthful. Blood. As a swordsman, if all the weapons in his hands are shot down, this is already a scene of defeat. Looking at Alan in front of him, Zoro opened his arms again, but was ignored by him. He turned around and walked back to hug Nokigao and Nami again. Don't play Hawkeye with me. I told you that this sparring session is to repay your friendship for taking care of Nami before. Although you suffered internal injuries just now, you can still feel my armed domineering energy in your body. Destroy. Improve your physical fitness, fight well, and experience it well, Roronoa Zoro. Thank you. Zoro picked up Wadao Yamanji from the ground and gave a respectful swordsman's salute to Alan's back, who had already walked away. In any case, the other party has shown him a state that he can strive to achieve in the future, and even saluting is appropriate. By the way, and Straw Hat Boy, your boat is at the location of the Fishman Paradise. You can let the villagers take you there. Don't worry about Nami anymore. I won't be so easy to talk to next time. Hello. Luffy stared at Eren expressionlessly, even though the other party ignored him. My name is Luffy, and I want to be the man who becomes One Piece. Although the sword-wielding uncle and Mr. Zepp both said that you once suppressed One Piece, after I become One Piece, I will definitely challenge you again. From a distance, Alan, who was leaving, let go of Nuo Chigao's slender waist and waved casually. Wait until Luffy becomes One Piece. At that time, he might have been at the top of the pirate world. World protagonist, haha, what if we let him challenge us? Chapter 31. Congratulations to host for completing the series of tasks, Road to the Strong 2, and taking a step forward on the road to becoming the world's top strongman in One Piece. Task reward. 1 spiritual fruit. Reward description. Mind fruit. After eating it, you can sense and influence the hearts and thoughts of others, and achieve extraordinary abilities such as telepathy and emotional manipulation. The main reason why they left the Straw Hats and took Nami and Nokigao home is that the mission has been completed. How can they go home and hold Nokigao, kiss and hug them while dealing with this group of people? So comfortable. As for the rewarded devil fruit, just give it to Nokigao. He himself is a user with the power of the Xuanwu fruit and cannot eat other devil fruits. Nami still needs to find a devil fruit that can affect the weather, preferably Logia. It seems that this spiritual fruit can only be used by forming a team. It is the best choice to let Nokigao who is following him eat it. The series of tasks is being released. Road to the Strong 3. The 3 major powers of the Straw Hats have begun to take shape. The strength of Blackfoot Sanji, a guy full of yellow waist, cannot be underestimated. Let them know what it means to be an almighty strong man. Mission details. Please use physical skills to defeat Blackfoot Sanji. Warm reminder. The main task cannot be refused. Please host complete the task seriously. There will be corresponding rewards for each completed task. Alan was a little speechless. Why didn't you pop up in the system just now? You could also use the excuse of teaching armed domineering to deal with Sanji. Now that he's home, is it possible that you still want to chase him out and beat him? Forget it, it's not a matter of urgency in itself. He probably knows the route of the Straw Hats. Even if Nami is not on the boat and the route he chooses is deviated, he can easily find them with their ability to cause trouble. The most important thing now is to give Nokigao the devil fruit. Take out the soul fruit directly from the system. The whole fruit looks like a star fruit with strange stripes on it. Nijigao, how about you try this fruit? Alan is just partial. If there is fruit, he only knows Nuochigao. I can't even get a piece of it. Nami pouted on the side, and Nokigao was about to say something, but was directly stopped by Alan. Eat it directly. This will give you incredible power. Nuochigao looked at Alan, as if he understood something, nodded, and took a bite. The next second, her delicate face was completely distorted. What does this smell like? Sour, bitter, spicy, salty, smelly, astringent, numbing, as if all the unacceptable tastes are concentrated in this one fruit. She couldn't take it anymore after just one mouthful, and instinctively wanted to spit it out. Alan quickly covered her mouth, patted her back gently and asked her to swallow. No one knows whether the devil fruit will be effective if you bite it into a bite and spit it out. If it doesn't work, wouldn't such a highly practical fruit be wasted? After Nuochigao swallowed the fruit, he felt a kind of power appear in his body, and even instinctively understood how to use this power in the most basic way. Nijigao, how do you feel? Alan looked at her curiously. From his observation, Nochigao's appearance did not seem to have changed at all. I don't feel anything. This sentence was not said by Nokigao, but it sounded directly in Alan's heart, making him a little surprised. This fruit is a spiritual fruit. I just ate it and I can sense the general thoughts and emotions of the people around me. It can also simply affect the emotions of other people. It can also directly connect with other people's minds and communicate directly in the heart. So awesome. Nami showed a look of envy next to him. Who wouldn't want the ability of a devil fruit to go to sea? Thank you, Alan. Nuochi hugged Alan's arm happily, raised her head and kissed him on the face. On the one hand, she was really excited about this devil fruit, and on the other hand, she used the fruit's ability to really detect Alan's inner feelings for her. Although there are some other ideas, they are no longer important. Alan was not polite either. Since he was offering a kiss, how could he kiss on the face? Of course he had to find the right place. Nami, who was originally a little envious and happy for Nuauchi, looked at the two of them in such a close state. Although she still had a smile on her face, she unconsciously felt a little sad in her heart. Unexpectedly, Nokigao, who was making out with Alan, also trembled slightly and glanced at Nami thoughtfully out of the corner of his eye. Nijigao, try it now and see if you can detect my thoughts. Nokigao gained a new ability, and the three of them simply sat in the room and studied the ability of this devil fruit together. After hearing Alan's words, Nuauchi mobilized her fruit power and tried her best to sense Alan's thoughts and emotions. After a moment, she shook her head. No, I can't sense any information at all. Alan nodded thoughtfully. When he was in a normal state at the beginning, Nokigao could still sense him, but once he was slightly covered with armed colors, even the most basic armed colors, Nokigao couldn't sense him at all, let alone go. Control other people too. Nijigao, try me. Nami also came over excitedly and looked at Nuochigao with burning eyes. The latter also smiled and nodded, and began to act seriously. Within a few seconds, Nami took a step back with surprise in his eyes. He opened his mouth a few times but said nothing. Nokigao had a mysterious face, constantly activating the power of his devil fruit. With the experience of Nokigao talking in her heart just now, coupled with the fluctuation of the power of the devil fruit around her, Alan also knew that she was talking to Nami in her heart. Looking at Nami's blushing expression and Noki's serious face, I didn't know what the two girls were talking about in their hearts. However, the ability of this devil fruit is absolutely practical, but Nokigao's strength is too weak, which prevents it from exerting its due ability. As long as Noki can develop his physical strength and devil fruit power in the future, it will definitely give him a great boost. The two women chatted in their minds for a while, and they stopped only when Nokigao's energy was exhausted. The power of the devil fruit consumes physical strength. Your body is still too weak. I will think of ways to improve you all later. Alan directly picked up Nochigao and walked towards their bedroom. Nami rolled her eyes and reached out to grab Nochigao's hand. Ellen, our sisters have something to discuss today. Just carry Nokigao into my room. Alan couldn't refute what he said. He was originally living in his sister's house, so naturally he was a guest as he pleased. In fact, Nokigao was a little bit picky, but her sister had to be pampered, not to mention that she really wanted to talk to Nami about what she just said, so she could only give Alan an apologetic look. Alan laughed dryly, carried Nokigao to Nami's bedroom, kissed her hard, and walked out of her bedroom with Nami's gloating expression. In the next 2 or 3 days, Nami and Nokigao would play cricket together from time to time. Even after having this spiritual fruit, Nokigao directly changed all the ways of communicating with Nami to telepathy. This also resulted in Alan being unable to eavesdrop on what the two women were saying even if he used his hockey. Nami also kept making mischief. Every night when she was about to go to bed, she would hold Nokigao's arm and drag her into her bedroom. Alan could only have a good time with Nokigao when she went out during the day. A fight. However, living such a life is quite comfortable, and the injuries in the body have gradually recovered. Alan, you are being rewarded. At noon, Nami ran in holding a few pieces of paper. Ah, her face turned red instantly, and she quickly threw the things in her hands on the table by the door, then turned and ran out. Alan walked over and picked up the paper Nami sent over. It was a stack of Marine's latest bounty orders. His photo was posted on the top one, with Alan written clearly on it, offering a reward of 50 million Baileys. What are you doing in the Warring States period? Just give me 50 million Baileys. In fact, after Alan eliminated Colonel Mouse and asked the ordinary Marine soldiers to leave, he was already prepared to be discovered by Sengoku and the others. Even his hegemonic aura surrounds the island at all times. If Marine comes, he will leave directly from the bottom of the sea. But I didn't expect that after waiting for so many days, this 50 million Baileys, who are you humiliating? Under his reward order is Luffy's familiar smiling face. In the original book, they defeated Eren, and Zoro beat up the Mouse Colonel before being rewarded by Marine. But now that Colonel Mouse and Eren have been killed by him, why does Luffy still have a bounty? The correction ability of the World Line is truly terrifying. Opening the door, Nami was sitting on the chair thoughtfully, holding her chin with her little hand, wondering what she was thinking. Nami, Alan startled her as soon as he spoke, and her pretty face instantly turned red when she thought of the scene she just saw. Oh, you scared me, what happened? Although Alan does not have the ability to sense other people's thoughts as high as Noki, he also knows what Nami is thinking. After so many days, it's time. Let's go to sea tomorrow. Alan's words immediately made Nami stay where she was. Although she has been busy following the villagers these days, she still has her dream in her heart. However, she had decided to go to sea with Alan and Nokigao, and she had to respect their opinions, so she did not put forward her own ideas for the time being. Unexpectedly, Alan actually brought it up today. Really? Nami looked up at Alan with an expectant expression, indescribably coquettish. Of course, you've been waiting for so long, why don't I hurry up and make arrangements? Alan gently rubbed Nami's hair, which made the latter's face instantly become hot. He twisted his neck casually a few times, trying to get his hair away from Alan's hand. But this intensity doesn't look like he's trying to break free, but more like he's acting coquettishly. Nokigao stood aside with his arms folded, watching the interaction between Alan and Nami, without the slightest hint of jealousy. Then I'll go talk to Aegean and the others. A few seconds later, Nami, who was still feeling a little intoxicated, suddenly noticed Nuo Chigao beside him. His face was startled, and he stood up and ran outside. In the evening, Kokoja village held another banquet. The previous banquet was to celebrate Eren's defeat and everyone's restoration of freedom, but this time, it was to celebrate Nami and Noki. The dishes on the table were even richer than last time, but the atmosphere was far from as high as last time. Everyone was drinking wine in a depressed mood. Although the dishes were delicious, they could not whet their appetite. Everyone, thank you for taking care of Nami and Nokigao over the years. I will take over now. Everyone has a full drink of this cup. I will accompany them back to visit you all in the future. That being said, everyone's mood is not very high. On the one hand, they really couldn't bear to let Nami and the others go. On the other hand, Alan had defeated Eren before and lived in Kokoja village, which made them feel a lot more at ease. Now that Alan is leaving, what will they do if another pirate comes? They are ordinary people at the bottom, and their perspective on things is much more realistic. Okay, everyone, Mr. Allen is not from Kokoja village. There is nothing wrong with leaving now. Everyone has their own journey. If he can take care of Eren for us when passing by, he is our biggest lucky you. As for Nami and Nokigao, they have their own choices. We have no right to interfere. We just hope that Mr. Allen can protect them. Aegean saw that something was wrong with the atmosphere of the banquet, and quickly stood up and shouted a few words of comfort. As the only police officer in Kokoja village, Aegean is still very appealing. Under his leadership, people also responded one after another. Although Nami and Nokigao don't usually drink much, they drank to their heart's content today and were carried home one by Alan. Early the next morning, Alan woke up Nami and Nokigao, who were still sleeping. The three of them carefully walked through the streets of Kokoja village with their backpacks and arrived at the pier. An extremely small boat has been parked here, and its simplicity is second only to Hawkeye's raft. After putting everything on the boat, Nami and Nokigao were still staring in the direction of the village. Nami was doing better, and had gone to sea many times before. But it was the first time for Nokigao to leave Kokoja village in more than 10 years, and his emotions must have been ups and downs. Alan put his arms around the shoulders of the two women and brought them to the boat to sit down. Then he opened the sails and used an oar to move the boat. The boat floated away in the distance along with the wind and currents. Let's go, our next stop is Rog Town. Based on the distance from Kokoja village to Rog Town, it would take at least 2 days and 2 nights to travel with such a small sailboat. But Alan's own strength lies here. Even if he doesn't use his physical body to row the boat directly or use the wind of his fist to inflate the sails, the water control ability of the Xuanwu fruit alone is enough to make their boat a lot faster. The three of them set off from Kokoja village in the early morning. When the sky just got dark at night, they could already see Rog Town in the twilight from a distance. The two women lay curiously in front of the boat and looked at the town in the distance. Although Nami had been out so many times, she had never been here before. Roger Town is known as the town of the beginning and end. One Piece Gal D. Roger was born here and was executed here. In addition, it is located at the entrance of the Grand Line. The Marines here are the most elite in the entire East China Sea. As a Nami thief, I don't dare to come here casually. This town is so big. Nuo Chigao looked at the far coastline stretching out to Rog Town, and said with some sigh. There is a bigger town on the other side of the Grand Line. Once I exchange all these treasures for baileys of large denominations, we can buy a boat and go to sea. Alan patted the huge backpack behind him and looked at Nokigao dotingly. But what if there are no boats to sell? Nuo Chigao looked at Alan with a cute look, but the latter smiled evilly. Then let's wait at the dock here. As long as there are pirates passing by, we will steal their ship and go directly to sea. Ah, just grab it. Seeing Nokigao's dumbfounded look, Alan and Nami suddenly laughed. She hasn't been to the sea yet and doesn't know what's going on at sea. These pirates are robbing each other. It's completely normal to seize a ship. Let's go, we've been enjoying the sea breeze all day, it's time to take a rest. The three of them entered Rog Town from the pier, but they didn't encounter any unsighted pirates who came out to challenge them. They successfully exchanged all the treasures for Bailey, and then simply found a hotel to stay. We are going to enter the Grand Line next, right? I don't know why, but at Nami's strong request, the three of them opened a room with 2 beds. At this time, she was in a state of excitement with glaring eyes. Yeah, Nami, are you scared? There was also a hint of excitement in Nuo Chigao's eyes. How can I be afraid? This is my dream all along. With a smile on his face, Nami stood up and waved excitedly, as if he was already on the Grand Line. After expressing his thoughts, Nami looked at Alan again. If we talk about dreams, Alan, do you have any dreams that you want to realize? This sentence directly silenced Alan. Of course he has dreams, but when he thinks of dreams, the scene where he was ambushed in the Valley of Gods will appear in his mind. If they really wanted to ambush him, how could the group of Marines and pirates wait until he arrived at the Valley of Gods before taking action? The biggest possibility is that after he disbanded his team and went to the Valley of the Gods, someone tipped off other forces. In an impromptu situation, Marine only had time to send Garp and Sengoku, who could come over, and cooperated with other pirates who came after receiving the news to fight a wave of ambush. As for who it is, if those guys are still alive, he must find out, otherwise he will not be able to think clearly. Even though he came here in the blink of an eye these 30 years, he can suffer losses, but betrayal cannot be tolerated. If he dies, he will die, if not, he will die. Alan, what's wrong with you? Seeing that Alan's expression changed obviously after he asked the question, Nami looked at Nokigao at a loss, and then asked timidly. It's okay, I just remembered how I was betrayed while chasing my dream. But it doesn't matter, I can just change my dream. Alan really thought about it. He had been trying to survive in the cracks for more than 10 years, trying to change the world, but he ended up like this, so why bother making himself so tired? Next, let's change our lifestyle. It's already the beginning of the plot, so we'll change our way of living and our goals. Starting from today, his goal is to collect all the figurine wives he bought in his previous life for a real-life stamp collection. Don't change your dreams, Nami suddenly retorted to Alan loudly. It's just that I was betrayed. Nokigao and I will accompany you to realize your dream. We will never betray you. Although Nuo Chigao didn't speak, he nodded with firm eyes and expressed his attitude. Alan was silent for a few seconds, then put his arm around Nokigao's slender waist, held the other hand in the air, and gestured towards Nami. What do you mean? I just want to comfort you. The latter's face turned slightly red and he muttered something, but he still came over obediently and put himself into Alan's arms. Taking a sip of Nuo Chigao's hair on the left and another sip of Nami on the right, Alan felt like he was almost drunk just by breathing like this. The mood was high, but after all, they had been sailing on the boat for a whole day, and both women were a little tired. The three of them talked for a while, and Nami went to rest on the bed on the other side, leaving the space here for Alan and Notch High. Nami is still over there. It's not good for us to do this. We will be heard. Why don't you just use your fruit power to talk to me? Yeah, well, Nokigao was a bit careless about this matter, as some sounds were indeed difficult to express using fruit abilities. By the way, Nokigao, doesn't your fruit ability affect emotions? Can you add an excited state to us all and see if it can be realized? Nokigao rolled his eyes at Alan in the dark. It was obviously a very serious fruit of the soul, but why did this guy have such strange functions? After Alan deliberately suppressed his armed domination, he really clearly felt an emotion rising from the bottom of his heart under the influence of Noki's high devil fruit ability. Early the next morning, Rog Town became lively. There were constant calls and shouts from outside, which made Nokigao, who was still in Alan's arms, immediately open his eyes. Nami, who was still on the other bed, had already dressed and was waiting happily for the two of them to get up. Under Nami's gaze, Nokigao pulled the quilt in front of her with some embarrassment. Although the two girls grew up together and had seen everything they should see, there was still a man under the quilt. Somewhat inappropriate. When Nokigao pulled the quilt away, Alan couldn't continue sleeping even if he wanted to. He could only sit up directly in front of Nami's red face. Pedestrians were coming and going outside, and the three of them decided to split into two groups. The two girls Nami took away most of Bailey and were responsible for buying ships and purchasing supplies, while Ellen was arranged by them to move around freely. Originally, Nokigao wanted to leave with Alan, but Nami directly grabbed his arm and dragged him in the direction of the market. Men can't hold on to you all the time. Only when you give them some freedom will they get closer to you. Nokigao looked at his sister with some suspicion. He couldn't remember what kind of emotional experience this girl had. But after all, Nami was a little thief cat who had been wandering the sea for so many years, so he must have more knowledge than her, so Nuo-Chigao obediently listened to her words. Of course, this was just their initial thought. When the two women arrived at the gate of the market, they looked at the rows of shops inside and the dazzling array of products, many of which they had never seen before. In an instant, the shopping gene in their blood began to awaken. After cheering, the two women rushed directly to the commercial street. Alan, who was paying attention to them from afar with a look of knowledge, also smiled bitterly and shook his head. Fortunately, he didn't follow them in, otherwise he might not have been able to withstand it even with his strength. However, in the other direction of Nami and Nuo-Chigao, there was a store that attracted Alan's attention. It was a weapons store, and the boss was sitting at the door. He had a big red nose and a strange hairstyle. He still had a big role in the original work. "Hey, boss, I heard you have a third-generation ghost here." The boss, who was still in a daze at the door of the store, was suddenly startled when he heard this, and then looked up at Alan standing in front of him. Although his figure is well proportioned, the muscles on his arms are quite angular, so he looks like he must be a strong man. "Guest, I'm really sorry, third-generation Kidetsu has been bought by someone. How about you take a look at the other knives in our store?" "Have you bought it? Then I heard that you still have snow in your store. Can you show it to me?" Snow walking. The owner of the weapons store was secretly stunned. He didn't know who knew this and dared to spread the news. Could it be that he was his own yellow-faced woman? "I'm really sorry, customer. The treasure of the store before was indeed Shui's eye, but I just gave it to a destined person." "Just." Alan's eyes lit up. "Is it a green-haired swordsman with 3 swords?" After seeing the boss nod, Alan also breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Luffy and the others had just come here. They searched for a while and successfully completed their tasks. Why not? Colonel Smoker, it's bad. News came from the headquarters that a big pirate has landed in Rog Town. They are Straw Hat Boy with a reward of 30 million Baileys and Alan with a reward of 50 million Baileys. Alan, is he the guy the first didn't meet on my voyage yesterday? I didn't expect him to come directly to Rog Town. In the Marine branch in Rogue Town, a Marine officer with short silver hair, shirtless and 2 cigars in his mouth, took his feet off the desk and put on his coat without caring. That's a big pirate with a bounty of 50 million. Do you want to? Before the Marine soldier who came to report could finish his words, Smoker pulled him directly to him by his collar. Do you want anything? A mere 50 million bounty is not a big pirate. I am Smoker. After I came here, have I ever let any pirates who broke into this place escape? No. Being stared at by Smoker, the Marine soldier swallowed involuntarily, and then shook his head in embarrassment. That's it, calm down, otherwise it will disrupt my pace, understand? Yes, report that a pirate ship was found anchored in the port. Before the Marine soldier could finish speaking, another soldier ran in with sweat on his face. Okay, I get it, whether it's 30 million or 50 million, I hope they can cheer me up a bit. Smoker shouldered his weapon and walked outside slowly. In the weakest sea like the East China Sea, with his strength, he would definitely kill indiscriminately. The sky gradually darkened, and Alan's expression became more interesting. At this point in time, if I remember correctly, if I want to find Luffy and the others, I can just go directly to the execution platform. A famous scene is about to take place, but this time our Nami is not participating. After asking someone for directions, Alan also rushed towards the execution platform. The dark clouds in the sky became heavier and heavier, and lightning struck down. Nami, Zoro, Sanji, I'm sorry, I'm going to die. As soon as Alan appeared here, he witnessed the famous scene of Luffy smiling at death, as well as the thick lightning that instantly struck down in the sky. Okay, Dad helps his son pretend to be 13, right? The entire execution platform became crumbling under this lightning, and flames rose up. But just when the fire was about to reach Luffy, heavy rain poured down from the sky, dousing the flames in an instant. In this series of actions, only Buggy the Clown was injured. Everyone in the scene, whether it was the crowd watching, the pirates, or the Marines, were all shocked by this scene. In the East China Sea, the information about devil fruit has not yet been popularized. Compared with man-made rescue, they believe that it is God's will. Do you believe in God? Even Sanji and Zoro looked at each other, unable to believe their eyes. However, what happened here did not hinder Smoker from ordering Marines to protect these pirates. Countless Marines ran out of the alley and surrounded the entire square where the execution platform was located. Smoker's eyes gradually became sharper, and the smile under the straw hat just now was exactly the same as the smile when One Piece Roger was executed 22 years ago. In any case, on my bet, Colonel of Marine Headquarters, the name of White Hunter, Smoker, Straw Hat Boy, I will never allow you to leave this island today. Buggy just woke up under the execution platform and wanted to cooperate with Erida to use Kamui, but Smoker's hands directly turned into smoke and controlled him. But it is said that the elements of Logia are actually part of the body. So which part of Smoker's arm is the cloud of smoke surrounding Alita's chest? The guy who looks at you with thick eyebrows and big eyes is actually a pretty guy. It's a pity that although Erida has become really good looking after eating the slippery fruit, Alan has still seen her before as a fat woman. He really can't be interested in this kind of role with a second plastic surgery, so he just like those artificial beauties from Banksy country. Seeing that Smoker had already got on his motorcycle, Alan immediately followed him. In the original work, he could stop the Straw Hats directly when they were about to leave, so it should be no problem now. Sure enough, after Smoker parked the motorcycle, Luffy and others also appeared on the road. Hey, I said you can't go to the Grand Line without knocking me down. Do you think I'm joking? Smoker held his cigar in his mouth and looked coldly at Luffy and Sanji in front of him. Sanji, you go first, I will be there soon. Luffy's expression also became serious. Although he knew that the Marine in front of him was definitely a difficult character, he really didn't want to escape anymore. At worst, he would have a good fight. Straw Hat Boy, I met you again. Are you in trouble? Just when Luffy was about to make Sanji run away, Alan decisively squatted on the roof nearby and spoke. Is it you? Two opponents who were difficult to deal with met each other, and Luffy showed a twisted look on his face. Don't worry, I'm here to give you a ride. Alan could feel that Long was already nearby, completing a task and selling him a favor. Although the strength of the Revolutionary Army is average, their intelligence work is still good, and there will be many opportunities to use them in the future. Hey, there must be a limit to what you can say. Oren with 50 million and Luffy with 30 million, I'm afraid you will stop here today. Smoker's face turned ugly. Ever since he came to Donghai, no one has dared to ignore him like this. Whispering sound. Alan curled his lips disdainfully. This is the limitation of the so-called weakest sea. After eating the fruit of Logia, you will not know how high the sky is. I don't know if these people are lucky or unlucky to live in a place where they are easily swept away by Garp. Send you off first. After shouting loudly, Alan appeared directly next to Sanji. He took aim at the melee on the beach and kicked him in the stomach. In an instant, Sanji was volleyed out by Alan like a football. He was frothing at the mouth and lost consciousness in midair, but the landing point was very obvious, the melee. Sanji, you. Before Luffy could finish speaking, Alan had already grabbed him by the collar and was about to throw him out with just a little force. You are so underestimating. Smoker's arms turned into smoke and moved directly towards Alan. Are you looking down on others? Alan, who had just caught Luffy, turned back and glanced sideways at Smoker. His calves were covered with armor, and he used the force of throwing Luffy to kick the smoke that surrounded him. Hiss. Smoker, who originally looked confident, suddenly changed his expression and quickly retreated back. After the two were more than 10 meters away, the elementalization was cancelled. At this time, his right arm was so painful that he couldn't lift it at all, and large beads of sweat fell from his forehead. When he looked up again, Smoker saw that Alan was no longer in sight, and a voice came softly from his ear. Just Logia Smoke Fruit, what makes you so arrogant? As soon as he finished speaking, Smoker felt that his left wrist, which he had just taken out, had been grabbed by Alan. He could even feel that he couldn't escape from the position where Alan grabbed him. Armed and domineering, Smoker's face suddenly darkened. Although he had not awakened any Haki, he came out of Marine headquarters and still had some understanding of the 3 colors of Haki. What is the purpose of a strong man like you coming to the East China Sea, the weakest sea? Does knowing how to use weapons count as a strong person? Smoker, you are really short-sighted. Has being in a corner of the East China Sea allowed you to degrade to this point? You know me. There was a hint of surprise in Smoker's eyes, but after thinking about it in his memory for a long time, he never remembered that he had had any contact with Alan. Let Colonel Smoker go. With a scream, a blue-white figure struck towards Alan with the sound of a blade cutting through the air. Bite. Alan easily blocked the long knife in the attacker's hand with just his fingers, and there was a playful smile on his face. Smoker, you asked me why I came to the East China Sea. I just came to see these beautiful ladies. As he spoke, Alan's figure swayed and appeared in front of Dusky, reaching out to lift the other person's chin. Compared with her 2 years later, Dusky is still too immature now, both in terms of strength and figure. You, let me go. Being teased by an enemy in this way, Dusky's face turned red with embarrassment, but after struggling a few times, she could not escape Alan's grasp, and even her eye circles were a little red. Dusky, Alan, let her go. Smoker also roared and struggled towards this side, but was kicked back by Alan again. What? It makes me look like a villain who came to rob civilian girls. You Marines are not very righteous, right? Suddenly, his eyes narrowed and he noticed a figure in a green cloak in the distance, whose momentum was faintly pressing towards him. The real master has appeared. Then I won't play with you. See you again when we are destined. As soon as he finished speaking, Alan pecked Dusky on her lips and walked away coolly, leaving the latter in a daze, not knowing what to do. Don't go, don't go. Smoker wanted to catch up, but as soon as he got up from the ground, a mouthful of blood spurted out and he fell back again. Alan's feet were not so easy to catch. Even if he didn't use his full strength, Smoker suffered a lot. Colonel Smoker. Dusky couldn't care less about her shyness and grief, and when she saw Smoker's miserable state, she ran over to help him. At this time, Alan was already standing opposite the cloaked figure, looking at him curiously. We finally meet, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Dragon. I have long admired your name, Mr. Alan, the subversary. Have you admired your name for a long time? Do you know me? Looking at Long's age, he must have been 13 or 14 years old during the Battle of God's Valley. I have heard my father mention your quotations and deeds before, and I express my deep admiration. The original intention of founding the Revolutionary Army also has something to do with your shouts on the sea. The actual age difference between the two is absolutely not big. Even now, Alan looks dozens of years younger than Long, but Long faces him as a junior and admirer. Has something to do with me. Ha ha, then Garp must hate me to death. But when Long said this, Alan was not surprised at all. At that time, he spread a lot of remarks about freedom, equality, democracy, etc. on the sea. It is entirely possible for Long to say that he was guided by his words. Hearing Alan mention Garp, Long didn't answer. After he decided to found the Revolutionary Army, every time he met Garp, while being taught by Iron Fist's love, he also listened to Garp's nagging complaints about Alan. But this is all in the past, the most important thing now is Alan's attitude. Mr. Allen, I am really glad to see that you, the pioneer of the revolution, did not fall in the war more than 30 years ago. Now that you have come back, can you please? Cannot. Of course Alan knew what Long wanted to say, so he waved his hand and rejected him without waiting for him to finish. Even if he wanted to change the world, he would choose to directly fight against the Tianlong people, instead of hiding in Tibet like the revolutionary army created by Long. That was not in line with his character. But, I still remember your previous quotations here. You said, "Dragon, what do you think of the world now? What about this world?" Long was slightly startled. This was a question he often asked others, but now it was Alan who asked him. But he didn't hesitate at all, with a hint of depth in his eyes. This world is full of suffering and injustice, people live in fear and oppression, and their freedom and dreams are ruthlessly deprived. Under the rule of the world government and the celestial dragons, the strong bully the weak and justice is distorted, so I firmly believe that the world should not be bound by greed and ambition. Everyone has the right to pursue freedom and happiness. As long as we unite as one day we can break the darkness and welcome the light. Seeing the firm look on Long's face and the hopeful gaze looking at him, Alan was silent for a few seconds. In this case, let me send you a few words. I hope they can help you. A single spark can start a prairie fire. Revolutionary war is a war of the masses. Only by mobilizing the masses can we fight the war. Only by relying on the masses can we fight the war. Not only must we be good at destroying an old world, we must also be good at building a new world. This was what a great leader said in his previous life. Alan relayed it to Long here, which also caused huge fluctuations in the latter's heart. Okay, I'm leaving, you can go slowly. After saying that, Alan directly used his sense of sight to find the location of Nami and Nokigao, and rushed over there. Now the whole Rog town is in chaos, and he is afraid that some blind pirate or marine will hurt the two women. Mr. Allen, although you have not joined, all the revolutionary armies will continue to fight according to your will. You will always be the instructor of our revolutionary army. Alan staggered as he was walking away. He didn't expect that Long, with his thick eyebrows and big eyes, could be so deceptive. There are so many Marines on the streets in Rogue Town. If he shouts like this, can he still have time to calm down? No wonder this guy has those lines on his face. It must have been caused by Garp being too sinister when he was a kid. That's fine. Lousy won't feel guilty when he uses them in the Revolutionary Army in the future. He will use them steadily. Dasky, go and ask 2 people to help me up. I want to send a notice to the headquarters. Alan, the great pirate in the East China Sea, actually has contacts with Monkey D. Long, the world's largest criminal from the Revolutionary Army. Quote. Smoker struggled a few times, but the severe pain in his body prevented him from sitting up successfully. He could only lie helplessly on the ground and give orders to Dasky. The latter then called a few soldiers to set up a stretcher and carried Smoker up as if he had just woken up from a dream. At this time, in a clothing store, Nami and Nokigao were still trying on clothes. After all, with a huge sum of more than 100 million Baileys in hand, it is no problem to buy a few more clothes. 2 guests, you are simply born to dress up. This dress is really suitable for you. It's so elegant. The proprietress of the clothing store followed them around like a waiter. The boxes were filled with Baileys, which made her stare straight out just now. Looking at the clothes that the 2 women had tried on, piled up on the counter like a mountain, she couldn't help laughing. Both of you, can I wrap up all these clothes for you? No need, just the 2 pieces we are wearing will be fine. With the landlady's expression on the verge of tears, Nami and Nuo Chigao walked out of the clothing store laughing. Try it on, it's impossible to buy. But as soon as they walked out, they discovered that the atmosphere on the street was obviously not right. Groups of Marines with live ammunition kept running past in front of them, and their expressions were very serious. Why is there such a fuss today? Isn't Colonel Smoker in town? Forget it. I heard that Colonel Smoker was defeated by the pirates and was just carried back to the Marine base. What? You can't. Which pirate is so strong? I don't know. How can ordinary people like us dare to go and take a peek at the battles of those strong men? Nami and Nuo Chigao listened to the discussions of the residents around them, and for no reason they felt that the person they were talking about was probably Alan. Nokigao, do you think the pirate they said defeated Colonel Smoker was? That's me. Wow, your new clothes look great. Before Nokigao could reply, an extra hand appeared on the waists of the two women at the same time, and Alan appeared between them without knowing when. Of course, I picked it. Seeing Alan's slightly exaggerated expression, Nami snorted arrogantly, but as if she didn't notice the big hands on her waist, she followed Alan forward with Nokigao. Did you buy a boat? No, the boats here have to be ordered in advance, so. Don't worry, I can do something even if you don't buy a boat. Isn't it just a pirate ship? They didn't even need to grab it. After all, he watched Buggy being captured by Smoker with his own eyes. Then couldn't he just accept the Buggy Pirates ship parked in the port? This is the Red-Nosed Pirates. Nami stood in front of the Buggy Pirates ship and frowned at the pirate flag hanging on it. She had dealt with this guy on Luffy's ship before. Good guy, you are quite straightforward. He is clearly called the Clown Buggy, okay. It's called Red Nose, the big red-nosed pirate ship. Alan glanced at Nami teasingly, who gently stretched out his hand to twist his waist and looked away. Okay, red-nosed pirates. Alan smiled sarcastically, and the three of them boarded the ship along the wooden planks extending from the deck. Nuachi Gao stood beside him with his eyebrows raised in a sneer. Hey, you three, that's a pirate ship, what are you going to do? The marine soldier with no eyes opened his mouth to stop him. Before Nami and the others could open their mouths, Alan's conqueror's domineering power shook, and all the soldiers in the port fainted instantly. Bulu Bulu, Moxie Moxie, I am Warring States, what's going on? As the top officer of the Donghai Marine Division, Smoker still has the right to directly contact the Fleet Admiral Warring States headquarters, but he is only allowed to call in emergencies. Warring States Fleet Admiral, a big pirate appeared in the East China Sea, and Iran has a bounty of 50 million. It is currently known that he has armed color hockey, Conqueror's hockey, and has a deep relationship with the Dragon of the Revolutionary Army. Alan, Smoker was keenly aware of the stunned expression on the phone bug representing the Warring States period in front of him. Smoker, I didn't hear you clearly. Who did you just say? Warring States' lips trembled a little. There are thousands if not tens of thousands of people named Alan on this sea, but he has never heard of someone with an armed color and conqueror's domineering attitude in recent years. Plus, it has something to do with that fool Long. That's the only one left. Others don't know why Long went out to join the Revolutionary Army. Why don't he and Garp still know? I was simply influenced by that guy's weird remarks. Is it really that guy? Colonel Smoker, this matter will be handled by the headquarters. You don't need to pay attention to it for the time being. Warring States rubbed his eyebrows. If it was really him, it would be difficult. Bring me a copy of Donghai's latest reward order. The adjutant left in response and returned a few minutes later with a stack of reward orders. The person in the top photo made Warring States tremble as soon as he saw it. Is it him? He looks so similar, but how come he doesn't look older after so many years? No, we have to make sure. If it's him, things will be very serious. While thinking about it, Warring States found a phone bug and dialed. Hello, Warring States period. I'm still in the East China Sea. I have to escort a marine scumbag. If nothing happens, hang up. I'm very busy. Wait a minute, I sent you a reward order. He is in the East China Sea now. You should go over and have a look. A rough voice came from the other side of the phone. Seeing that the other party was about to hang up, Warring States quickly stopped him with a dark look on his face. What? The reward order in the East China Sea, what's there? Hey, Warring States, are you not mistaken? Seeing the surprised expression on Garp's face, Sengoku nodded with satisfaction. Although I don't know what's going on, the world can no longer bear the appearance of another Alan. You should rush to Rog Town now. If it doesn't work, go back to the Grand Line. The headquarters will keep an eye on her and their positions in real time. I'll pass on the news to you. Good. Garp also had a look of solemnity on his face. At this time, he didn't care about joking with Warring States, and just waved his hand after hanging up the phone. Turn around and head towards Rog Town at full speed. Yes. After coming out of Rog Town, the the first thing Alan did was to take down the flag of the buggy pirates with a black face, and then directly dismantle the circus tent on the cabin by force. I don't know what perspective the four emperors of the future four emperors, who are divided in the fruit of luck, recruited such a group of strange crew members, which are completely different from Shanks. After going out to sea, the weather on the sea was even worse than on the island. The strong wind kept stirring up the waves. If Alan hadn't been physically strong and forcibly controlled the sail, he might not have known where it had deviated. Nami, come here. What are you doing? I'm still looking at the heading. Nami, who was still frowning at the weather and the distant route, was stunned for a moment. Although there was a questioning tone on her lips, she still obediently grabbed the side of the ship and came to Alan's side. Then she felt that he was moving towards her head. As soon as she took a shot, it was like having an enlightenment. Countless navigation knowledge continued to pour into her brain, and was quickly absorbed by her. Congratulations to the host for completing the series of tasks, Road to the Strong 3, and taking a step forward on the road to becoming the top player in the world of One Piece. Task Reward. A copy of Nami's navigation knowledge 2 years later. Reward Description. Nami uses the meteorological knowledge learned in Visalia, a small island, to accurately judge natural factors such as wind direction and sea currents. She can also formulate reasonable navigation strategies based on the characteristics of the sea area and weather changes to ensure that the ship's safe and efficient navigation. He could just give this kind of reward to Nami directly. Now Nami is still in the stage of just going to sea. Her previous sailing knowledge was all self-taught based on her own talent. Although she is professional enough, it is absolutely different from 2 years later. Now she is good enough to take on the responsibility of being the navigator on Alan's ship. Feeling that she had so much navigation knowledge for no reason, Nami secretly glanced at Alan, who nodded at her, and she felt at ease. With this knowledge of navigation, Nami didn't panic at all when looking at the clouds and strong winds in front of him. He took a chart in his hand and looked at it carefully, then judged the current weather conditions, and calmly adjusted the sailing ship's direction. The three of them sailed steadily towards the Red Earth continent. Hiss, this ocean current can actually climb up the mountain. After carefully looking at the chart, Nami's eyes showed a hint of surprise, and Alan also looked seriously at the majestic mountain in front of him. This body was born in the New World. It has never been to the upside-down mountain and has never witnessed this strange scene with its own eyes. Alan, control the steering well. The most important thing now is the channel, otherwise it will be easy to hit the rocks. Good. With Alan's physical fitness, it was no problem to hold the rudder of the ship. Nojigao and Nami both held on to the mast and looked excitedly ahead, as the waves carried their sailboat towards the Red Earth continent. Go. In the middle of the rock wall, there is a thin invisible gap. It is this gap that prevents the pirate ships heading for the Grand Line from hitting the rock wall and destroying the ship. Yes, this is the direction, Alan, just hold the rudder steady. Seeing the ship getting closer and closer to the Red Earth continent, Nami and Nuochigao also became a little nervous. If they were not careful, they would end up here. Even with the support of the navigator's knowledge, Nami's palms were sweaty and she and Nokigao hugged each other tightly. In their eyes, the sailboat boarded the mountain climbing current with great danger, sailing from bottom to top with huge kinetic energy. At this time, Alan suddenly felt like he was riding a roller coaster in later generations, slowly climbing upwards, and then suddenly turning sharply downwards, becoming a weightless journey. Sure enough, when they reached the highest point, the sea current suddenly slowed down, and then began to swoop down. Along with Nami and Nuochigao's exclamations, the front was no longer covered with clouds, and a blue sea came into view. The Grand Line has arrived. The roller coaster-like trajectory of the sailboat also made the two women scream in surprise, and the strong wind brought up from the bottom up also kept blowing the clothes of the three of them. Nami and Nokigao both raised their hands high, feeling the oncoming wind pressure. Suddenly, Nami narrowed her eyes and sighed. This is the Grand Line. Yes, although it was his first time here, Alan became a little bored after standing aside and looking at the sea for a few times. After all, it was just like that, and the novelty wore off easily. But at this moment, there is a beautiful scenery that is more beautiful than the sea right next to him. How could he miss it? Unconsciously, Alan's eyes began to move sideways. It was already the summer season, Tsunami and Nuochi were wearing relatively cool clothes. Under the strong wind, their clothes would inevitably become messy. Although Nuochi Gao was carefully observed and measured by Alan countless times, Nami has not been measured yet. Now it seems that the real strength is even higher than Nuochi Gao. Nuochi Gao, look, what's that in front of you? It's so big. Nami was still in the excitement of diving at a high speed, grabbing Nokigao's hand and cheering. Suddenly she noticed Alan's eyes, her cheeks turned red, but she didn't mean to cover it up at all. Careful. When the sailboat was about to land on the water, Alan directly hugged the two women's slender waists and jumped up gently. His body is naturally indifferent to this kind of impact, but Nami and Nokigao are just ordinary people at the moment, and they are still vulnerable to internal injuries under such an impact. Buzz. A huge sound came from the sea below, and a black wall appeared in front of the three people. There were various scars on the huge forehead. This is Laboon. It does look quite big. Alan sighed, and then the sailboat drifted past its body with the current and docked towards the shore. If I remember correctly, there is an old guy who we met decades ago who is the lighthouse keeper of Twin Gorges here. Cloacas, all my old friends have appeared, why don't you come out and see them? Which old friend is here? In the distance, an old man walked out of the lighthouse. His hairstyle was like a saffron, purple and yellow. Although he looks very old, his body is still very strong, with sharp muscles wrapped in a short-sleeved shirt. Kid, are you kidding me? After Crocus came out of the lighthouse, he only saw three young figures standing on the deck of the sailboat in front of him, with a speechless expression on their faces. Just by spending time with Laboon in Twin Gorges, he must be older than these three young ones. Still an old friend, where did such a young old friend come from? Hey, isn't it, Crocus, when we were at the Valley of the Gods, I remembered you coming over. I haven't seen you in decades, so you don't count as an old friend. Although there was a smile on Alan's face, the smile was somewhat malicious. Valley of the Gods. Crocus squinted his eyes and looked at Alan on the deck. His attire and appearance unconsciously overlapped with that of the man back then. No. No way. As the two figures merged into one in his mind, Crocus's eyes widened and he unconsciously took a few steps back. Even if he fell to the ground, he was unconscious. Shivering, he put on an expression of disbelief. What can't you do? Alan jumped lightly from the deck, which also caused Crocus to struggle and crawl back a few meters on the ground. People who have not experienced the battle in the Valley of the Gods will never understand the horror of Alan at that time. It was a battle between Marine and the top pirates, and it resulted in such a tragic result. Even Rox, the genius who suppressed Roger, Whitebeard, and Golden Lion, was buried directly there. You haven't aged at all. Crocus's lips were trembling, and his hair was almost falling out now. Those strong men back then, Roger was dead, Sengoku and Whitebeard were old, and Garp was running around the world, and he was famous. A salted fish. But Alan is still 20 years old. As a doctor, he still has this kind of vision. With the top powerhouses in the world now, it is impossible for the three generals and the four emperors to join forces to fight against Alan. I am afraid the world is about to be in chaos. Give me a permanent pointer to Alabasta. Don't tell me you don't have one, or I'll be in a bad mood. Yes, I have it here. I'll go get it for you right now. Alan's casual words made Crocus tremble with fright. He nodded quickly, got up and ran towards his lighthouse. Nami and Nokigao looked at each other. They could tell that it was Alan's first time here. Why did he scare the old man like that? But everyone has their own secrets. If their men don't tell them, they won't bother to get to the bottom of it and ask for the answer. When he wants to say something, he will naturally explain it to them. After receiving Alabasta's permanent pointer from Crocus, Alan squinted his eyes and looked at him, and suddenly sighed. Although the Roger pirates participated in the siege and killing of me before, as a doctor, you did not participate in it. Logically speaking, I should not look for you. It's just that being surrounded and beaten really makes me suffocate. I just want to vent. As soon as he finished speaking, Alan had already appeared in front of Crocus. His fingers were covered with armed domineering energy, and he penetrated Crocus's shoulder directly, and blood suddenly flowed out. The latter was considered tough. He frowned and glanced at his injuries without saying a word. As the world's top doctor, this kind of minor injury is not considered an injury to you. You can handle it yourself. It's my business with you. After speaking, Alan returned to Nami and Nokigao, pulled up the anchor, and the sailboat slowly left. By the way, there is also Rayleigh who lives in seclusion in the Sabayati Islands. I will chat with him later. Just when Crocus breathed a sigh of relief, Alan's voice came from afar. He was about to say something, but he hesitated and shook his head without making a sound. As long as you can save your own life, how can you have the energy to care for others? I hope that old guy Rayleigh's strength won't decline too quickly, and he can fight with this guy twice, so he won't be beaten too badly. After leaving the Twin Gorges, Alan and the other sailboat headed straight for Alabasta. With the permanent pointer, there is no need to worry about the direction drifting. The small gardens along the way, and the Drum Island are not attractive to Alan at all. If there is no mission, he will not bother to interfere with Luffy's adventure. What was rare was that the weather calmed down immediately after they left the Twin Gorges. Alan put on his pants and came to the deck after 300 rounds of tumbling battles with Nokigao. Although he had memories of more than 10 years before, and it was less than a month after he came to these 30-odd years, Alan felt that 30-odd years later was where he should really exist. Not only because characters he was very familiar with in his previous life appeared here, but more importantly, although this era was called the Age of Pirates, it was really not as chaotic as the sea back then. After 2 stages of integration of the 3 legendary pirates, 4 emperors plus Shichibukai, the world has formed a set of rules. Even if it is still not very friendly to ordinary people, at least if you want to change it, you only need to kill the culprit. Just like to liberate Alabasta, you only need to defeat Crocodile, and to liberate Dressrosa, you only need to defeat Doflamingo. Listening to the sound of the water flowing under the boat, Alan raised his eyebrows, but his body did not react at all. A few seconds later, a figure appeared behind him and quietly sat down next to him. Why haven't you rested yet? Nokigao has fallen into a deep sleep now, and the only one who can come out is Nami. The latter rolled his eyes at him when he heard this. Why didn't he take a rest? If I didn't know what you were doing, I would have rushed in to save people. This is what I thought in my heart, but I couldn't say it in words. Nami smiled reluctantly. I simply couldn't sleep, so I came out for a walk. Turning to look at her unintentional expression, Alan hesitated for a moment, then put his hands on her shoulders and brought her into his arms with a slight force, but Nami did not refuse and leaned over. The two of them just leaned on the side of the ship, looking at the stars in the sky together, and were silent for a long time. Nami, have you considered the future of our relationship? Although it would be embarrassing to mention this kind of thing clearly, we can't let the girl's family take the initiative. Besides, Nami, as his wife with the largest collection of figures in his previous life, should still have this privilege. What to consider? Nami's face turned a little rosy. She glanced at Alan secretly and found that he was looking up at the stars, and then secretly breathed a sigh of relief. I'm just thinking about whether to be with me. Alan's voice was very soft, but when it reached Nami's ears, she felt like she was struck by lightning. She pointed at Alan and said nothing for a long time. Her first reaction was how could Alan be unfaithful to Nokigao and still come to tease her. But the next second, she realized that she was not as angry as she thought, but instead felt a sense of joy. This emotion made Nami feel a little bit scared. How could she think like this? Is it possible that she still wants to compete with Nuo Chigao for a man? No, it can't be like this. How can this be worthy of Nuo Chigao? Nami suddenly struggled out of Alan's arms, with a look of shame and anger on her face, staring at Alan. How do you know whether Nokigao agrees? Alan's faint voice made Nami freeze in place. She is a person with the ability of the soul fruit. Although she will not take the initiative to explore your inner thoughts, she can still feel your general emotions. Do you think you can hide your emotions from her? Nami was unable to refute these words, not to mention that Nokigao did tell her that he wanted to bring her and Alan together, but this, what is this? Before she could figure out her tangle, Alan had already reached out and grabbed her slender hand, and then held it directly in his hand. With a slight exertion, he hugged her back again. Nami hesitated for a moment, but did not continue to struggle, and allowed Alan to hold her, staring at the sky, silent and saying nothing. As a girl, no resistance is the best answer. Is it possible that she really wants to tell Alan that she is willing? The whole person was lying in Alan's arms, her exposed slender waist and Alan's exposed upper body skin connected, but she felt solid. The strong masculine aura surrounded Nami, making her heart beat wildly. The bright moonlight was suddenly blocked, and a shadow covered her face. Alan was looking down at her from top to bottom. The two people's eyes connected together, and they instantly understood each other's thoughts. Stop for a moment. I'm almost suffocating. Let me slow down. As he spoke, Nami packed up her upper body clothes. She originally wore less clothes, but now he pushed them up. Alan chuckled and tightened his arms around Nami's waist. I don't want to slow down anymore. It feels so tortuous. Nami, let's be together. Nami stretched out her hand weakly and punched Alan's chest. She really knew why Nokigao agreed that Alan came to her to express his love. Looking at Nami, who fell asleep instantly with some pity, Alan gently covered her with a quilt, and then opened the door, and a slim figure was already standing there. I'm sorry, Nokigao. Alan put his arms around her and wanted to say something, but she blocked her lips with her fingers. I brought this up first, so how can I blame you? As long as you treat me and Nami well in the future, it will be fine. Don't worry, it will definitely happen, I promise. Nijigao, it's only the middle of the night, should we? No more. Don't worry, I will definitely feel sorry for you this time. Okay then, keep your word. Ah, you liar. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.